Thank you for coming
To our show. To Tara's show.
to my show,
Our show.
Kate White's Talk. Kate White is a Tournesol award-winning painter. I met her at the Headlands when she had her residency there. And I started stalking her, and we eventually became friends because she's a great artist and a wonderful person who remembers people and is kind and supportive.
Aww.
And really, I've had the pleasure of looking at a lot of art with Kate over the years. We do art dates, various sorts, and it's a pleasure to look at art with Kate because she looks deeply and with her whole heart, and she's definitely someone who can see something in every piece of work because her heart's open to art and she believes in art, and I don't know if I do as much as you do, so it's really you're a great friend to have. So I asked Kate if she would do an artist talk with me about my work because you're great at looking at art. So that's Kate, and I'm Tara, and I'm the artist, and I did this show. And the title of the show is called End Time because it's 5 ceramic installations that are in black and white that are kind of 5 years of my life of grappling with ecocide, mass extinction, democratic collapse, meaning collapse, the current epoch that we're in, and trying to make sense of it. So it's not the only apocalypse we've ever been in, but it is the end of the Holocene. I wrote a little booklet that has some wordy essays about all of this.
Oh, I haven't read the essays. I should
Yeah,
have read the essays
that's
before
all right.
this.
That's all right.
Dang. Okay.
That's okay. And then, so this is just me talking like a normal person. We can start with this piece, which is titled Other Magic. I made it in 2016. And I was trying to, for myself, like find icons of femininity that meant something to me, that I felt like reflected a power that I wanted to have or engage with. And it was also, I wasn't the only one in around. There were a lot of like witch things happening. And I feel like there still are a lot of tarot readings. This whole woo thing really started to open up, and I was starting to engage with that. And at the same time, it was an election year, very dynamic and challenging election year for the United States and the cultures that we were in. If you remember, Trump was running, and that was really polarizing. And then among the Democrats, there was further fracturing and polarization.
Are you talking specifically like Bernie versus Hillary people?
The Bernie Clinton people.
Yeah.
Like in my household, some of us were Bernie, some of us were Clinton, and it was hard.
Burn the witch.
Now I understand the piece.
So that fracturing. There was also, I was saying that within like reaching for this type of occult, like this fetishization that I have of the occult and the interest and the attraction to it, I fall into the category of a settler, colonialist, right? I don't have roots to my European background necessarily. I might be a dual citizen, but I don't have roots and connection. And also looking into witchcraft, it's kind of was made up by white dudes about Italian grandmothers. So there's not a lot there. It's a new age woo thing. And that can be a dangerous practice because I do feel like energy is real. So not that I'm scared of darkness because I believe in energy. I know that I feel that magnetism attracts what it is, and I'm not scared of evil spirits or whatever because there's plenty of evil actually evident in our time. So this is trying to be more of a yin-yang balance thing. What do you think of it, Kate?
Well, I'll tell you, I just want to go back to at the very beginning and just interject something real quick about how you feel like I believe in art more than you do. I will say that in my moments of loss of faith in art, you have buoyed my faith and belief in this whole project that we're involved in. So that is a mutual exchange of both of us keeping the faith. And
the blind leading the blind.
Yeah. Well, you know, sometimes the blind can have higher vision.
Yep.
And this is the first time I've seen this piece in person, and I don't know, maybe we should just kind of like do our normal like riffing on it. I mean, at your Zoom talk last night, I mean, you actually named it with like the fear of appropriating, like, you know, cultural appropriation of, say, like witchy stuff or mystical stuff.
Well, there's a relationship between woo and cultural appropriation. There's like a white woman thing where because we don't have roots, we tend to grasp and grab other meaningful things, and we can misuse those things.
Right.
Yes.
Which I totally know what that is and agree. But I feel like there's a piece left out of this conversation sometimes, which is the difference between appropriating and the more challenging, deeper work of embodying.
Which is, say more.
Which is something for each person to find individually. But I think the attraction to these other traditions is not shallow or superficial or to be disregarded as like, you know, colonizing. I think it can become that when we aren't like you
stay
are.
to surface.
Right, like willing to not even study it deeper, but explore for us in our own psyches, in our own bodies, in our own creative processes, what these images and symbols, how they resonate in our own bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at your work through that lens. Like, how is this resonating in your body? I mean, the aesthetic form that comes out of your engagement with these ideas is that. It's what your body made, what your senses, how your senses metabolized these ideas. So I'm not in the like, it's appropriation, out. It's more like, let's be interested in what it actually is and what it's telling us.
Absolutely.
So
I am interested.
Yeah.
I just want to be aware of, there's critique, and I want to embody that too. Like, that's also welcome.
Right.
And I don't think that witchcraft is necessarily appropriation. It's more the woo. And I don't think this represents witchcraft in any way, other than like the tongue-in-cheek, haha, it's a witch.
It's
like
right, with a hat. Right.
Medieval thing. Like, this is when I reach, what do I get? I reached at that time to this.
Yes. And I feel like this tells us something about your experience of those ideas. And so then I have questions, you know, like, this one has a face, this one has a mirror. Is this about looking into our unknown parts, looking at our shadow?
Oh, this is the shadow witch. So this is the
Right.
white witch, and this is the shadow witch. And I don't know. I don't know who I like better or who I trust more. But you got to make friends with both of them. Is the story there? Like,
This one feels like, even though it has a mirror, it feels like it's challenging and staring this one down.
it's taking that one's face, literally.
Yeah.
You get the right angle.
Yeah. And why did you make a hole in this one?
Because it's a vacuum. There's a hole. There's a God-shaped hole.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So do they need each other to become whole?
I think to be this piece, yeah.
Right.
I don't think they exist without each other.
And then we have these black holes and mirrors echoed on the wall. And so what I read, and of course, you know, it's not necessarily your intention, but what I get from it is that there is wholeness. The parts may be scattered to the winds, but that her missing solidity here is represented out there in the atmosphere.
That's sweet.
And that this is a form of like, it's almost like this one seems almost like threatening or challenging, but it also, like, I have compassion for this figure too, because it feels like the feeling of dissociation, you know, like parts missing.
Yes.
And maybe this part is looking to this more like, this one looks more like in an emotional state, connected to her emotional experience.
Or her ego, and this one is less ego.
You think? Do you feel the white one is
I feel
like the Karen? Is this the Karen?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't.
To me, her face looks very, like humble and sweet.
Nice.
And how she's kind of like looking off to the side. There's a kind of humility and vulnerability.
It's interesting too that I made her before I made the shadow, which was in dialogue, and this, she has like this also a heart chakra shattering, which is completely incidental.
Oh,
It was
wow.
not planned.
That was not planned? Camera guy, get this.
Oh yeah, I was supposed to introduce Sean, everybody.
That's all right.
Oh, we did. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
did we not? Sorry. This is our. Look, this is where the alchemical, like, this is witchcraft.
There you go.
The clay did it.
The clay did it, and maybe the clay told me to then make this thing.
So this heart thing broke, and then you made this one with the
Yes.
empty heart. This is why making art brings us into the realm of magic in a way that just like scholarly study or even activism doesn't, because you're engaging with the material world that has a life of its own,
Yeah.
that contributes to the overall like meaning of what you're doing in ways that we don't control.
Yeah.
I love knowing that. I'm so glad that we found that out in this conversation.
Okay.
Shall we move on?
Do you have questions about any of this?
Not yet,
You
no.
want to chip in on any of this? Okay.
Actually, could you speak really quick a little bit about the materials you chose?
Of course. So these are ceramic, and then this is an epoxy, like a 2-part epoxy. That's a casting material that I never learned how to cast, but I like the way that it pours. I don't know why, but I'm really fond of drips. So this is a Cone 10 Shino firing, which does carbon trapping if you put wax resist on it. Do those words make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it's made out of porcelain, which is why there's some failure, but the porcelain traps some of the carbon in the high fire as well.
Okay.
And then this is a medium fire stoneware that with black underglaze on it, and a little bit of spray paint. And this thing actually shattered in the firing. I fired it too soon, so I fired it in a bunch of pieces, and then adhered it all back together to make this shape.
Oh, that's really
So if you look
interesting.
closely, you can see cracks and you can see where the repairs were made.
Wow, that's interesting in response to what was being said about this one as well.
Yeah,
The shattering and
it's definitely a broken, shattered shadow put back together
the.
with elements thrown across the wall.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, one of my questions was like, why engage with these ideas through art rather than just through, academic work or activism? And I just answered my own question.
Because the materiality.
The materiality is embodying the ideas. That's what I'm talking about, the difference between like appropriating, like, studying from a distance and actually having an embodied experience of it.
That's interesting. I still think it's a good question, like why make work when it's about a narrative? Like why not just tell the narrative?
Right.
Because I think that's a common question too, and I have no idea. I have no idea why. I think that I'm just drawn to make. I want to make, and not all. Not all of my work looks like this. I mean, other like tapestries and things that have no story necessarily. Whereas these each all are me troubling with a narrative and a story that's sort of a critique of where we're at. And maybe I don't have the full capacity to come to a thesis or an antithesis around any of this. They're explorations, and then making the exploration more is revealed, and I imagine the study would be the same way. It's just not language is not my go-to process.
Even though you're an amazing writer.
I'm an okay writer.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying so.
Well, I just wonder if, because of the worldview that we're enculturated in, that is not animistic, that doesn't see that sees the material world as not animated and speaking to us, that we miss what art is doing sometimes.
Probably.
Like that it actually, like we, even as we long for this connection to some other way of living, it's like there, but we don't even hear it or see it or believe that it's real.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, Maria. This is Maria Porges.
Hi, Maria. Tara.
Nice to
Tara
meet you in person.
Daly. You know me. We're doing a talk, and we're filming it right now too.
Informally. Maria.
There's Maria Porges.
So you can walk around.
Go ahead and look around. Or
Yeah, have your thing. So
Okay.
after I made that piece, I made these. This is a series called Saints for the Anthropocene, and it was portraits of 3 women who I thought did, as the leadership that, the political leadership in the world seemed like so weak and ineffective towards the problems that we actually have, and not willing to look at them. I turned to 3 people who I thought did look at the problems and had solutions to them to offer, and guides into the Anthropocene. And the 3 people that I did portraits of were Octavia Butler, the author, Vandana Shiva, the food activist and organic farmer, and the 3rd person was Buffy St. Marie. And I did not show her, I did not include her in this show because scandals around her identity, and talk about appropriation. Turns out she had claimed to be Native American her entire life, and although she was adopted by the Piapot tribe in her 20s, last year we all found out that she was not a Native American. She is of Italian American descent, and she lived as a pretendian, and so that's kind of a bummer and a heartbreak. But I didn't feel like I could show that in good faith anymore. And interestingly, like, I put these people on pedestals, and the work that I'm making now. So this is 2017, 2018. And the work I'm making now is very much about not putting people on pedestals, not having a single personality, not having a cult of personality, not elevating. Like, we're in academic circles, which in secular circles, it's very much required that you source your information, and that this is considered rigorous. It's like having a source, a name, an identity, an individual within a context. And I think that's interesting. I do practice that. I still title works with quotes from people, but it makes me wonder about maybe my own intuitive knowing if that's valuable, and if it's worth connecting with others. If you don't know who I'm referencing, are we still having the same conversation? So if anybody has questions about either of these women, I would like to go on a spiel, unless you...
Well, I have thoughts about that whole idea of, because I too have had the sort of internalized pressure of, some person in authority says something, and I have this compulsion to like get that quote down and share it with the world because it validates what I already know and feel.
Yeah.
But coming from them, it somehow carries more authority.
Yes.
And even questioning that whole process, like there's academic rigor, but where's the spiritual rigor? what would that even be? And I feel like these people have it. That's why they influence the world in such powerful ways. And so it's less maybe about taking their influence as our own and sharing, being like, but she said it, so it must be true. But like embodying the kind of authority they're modeling for us, metabolizing it for our own bodies the way you're doing when you make art, and standing on our own authority and that's what you're talking about. Like,
yeah, talking about that, but I also feel like, again, a distrust in the individual and the alienation of that. So,
but these are individuals.
they are individuals.
Hey, sorry. You
Oh,
get a little
closer.
closer together.
Yeah. Oh, good idea.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I
I
feel
feel
like
like this.
We need heroes. We need heroes.
Do we need heroes?
I
We
think
need
we
myths.
do. We need to feel like, not to follow blindly, but we need leaders. We need someone to lead us out of the darkness.
Yeah.
Well, like Buffy St. Marie, what a great example. Maybe the heroes are a projection of our own heroism that we are not yet ready to embody or act on. That they are the placeholder for that we inspire, like brings that feeling of inspiration and power to us.
Well, I wouldn't use her in that way.
But,
I think
her influence gave people that feeling. It wasn't about her, obviously, because she was a fraud. Doesn't mean that people didn't get that feeling from her.
I think there have been a lot of historical figures who turn out to be not what they represented themselves to be, but they provided exactly inspiration.
So there's this questioning of the hero's journey that's going on in the
Okay, so
mythopoetic
maybe hero
circles.
isn't the right word, but
There's the genius myth is what Michael Mead came up with as the balm to that, which is more communal. It's more the genius that we share, like that we all have individually, but that we also share. It's not necessarily attached to an identity. So that to me is more appealing and attractive now. Like I still think leadership,
especially because it's gender free.
it's gender free.
Gender free. It's
Yeah.
not gender located like.
It's also kind of not located in time the way that a hero's journey is, like this projection from point A to point B, but the genius is outside, inside, and before and after us.
And time and the whole idea of, some progression, is like, what if each person has their own genius that is in conflict with other people's genius, that there's not one route that we're supposed to be on that someone has access to, and we just pick the right one and follow them. It may be like in the other room with the pieces scattered about, that our wholeness requires an actual inclusiveness of all forms of genius that are not even in harmony with each other.
Yeah, that there's room for all of it. Could be.
Talk a little bit about why these works are all black and white.
So these works are kind of a critique. So they're kind of coming. They span 5 years. I said that earlier, but they're both the not having room for gray area. They're trying to embrace the shadow and the light. So I've kind of tried to invert white and black. Like I'm trying to empower the dark or the hidden or the obfuscated as something that is integral. The way of I want to see things in more colorful ways, but these also come from this personal striving as an artist, trying to be a formalist and to create shapes. And when I was trained, I was just like when I went to undergrad school in the 90s, all of like the colorful two-dimensional patterns were all discouraged. Everything was conceptual and black and white was serious. So I'm coming from that and I'm using that in my work as a critique of those things. but also relating to that, like that's where I come from. And the other work that I make simultaneous to this work is very colorful. So this is my soapbox, this is my I have something to say work, and the other work is more exploratory and I don't know what it's about. So this feels very, to me, narrative and has a specific point of view, and I think using black and white in that way adds this formalism to it.
And the mirrors?
The mirrors are trying to reflect a multitude. We're trying to take something small and make it big, and I mean, I don't know if the effect worked as much as I wanted it to be, like an infinity effect, but just to talk about how pervasive and permanent radiation is, and how much there was, and how it's not gone. It's just ubiquitous, and it's a problem.
Proliferation.
Yeah.
Just the word proliferation of, that's like a Buddhist term for like proliferating thoughts, becoming very destructive, and then like nuclear proliferation.
Yeah.
That's what I get from that.
That proliferation, I like that word, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Proliferation.
It's almost just like the more there is, the more momentum there becomes, the more just like proliferates.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about like the only color in the show being those colorful discs that are like lit, that the explosions are on.
Right. That was the first color that I started introducing into my work, and I love I love plexiglass as a material, and I love plastics, even though they're very problematic environmentally.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a source of pollution and damage, but again, can be beautiful and enchanting. I still love plexiglass. I just thought that they said something, like they're like an exclamation point to the otherwise what would be kind of a bland.
Okay, so this is an instance.
Come on in. Come back here.
Should we go in here? Should we be in
Well,
here?
it's going to be hard to shoot everybody, but I can go here.
Come on in.
So this is like us replicating our studio visit conversations. And whenever somebody is like, I just made this aesthetic choice because it called for it, my inclination is always to be like, no, there's some unconscious decision maker that is working through your senses and your preferences, your aesthetic preferences, to communicate something, and a philosophical reason to use them, conceptual reason to use them.
Sure.
So I don't know. Then I start thinking about the work that I've seen of yours that kind of feels like it comes out of these, the lumpy kind of amorphous shapes that you have that are kind of vertical.
Yeah.
And, yeah, the drippy shapes.
Yeah.
So I've never connected those to these before. Those are all very colorful.
Yeah.
So I'm like, did the birth of these organic forms come out of this concept of annihilation? Is this about like psychological annihilation, dismemberment? Are these representing like the end of identity that allows for new forms to be birthed?
Maybe.
And that these colorful discs were like the first kind of flickers of new life coming out of the end times.
Could be.
It's always good to hear somebody else riffing on your work.
Kate's the best riffer in the biz. She's a good riffer. Yeah.
I'm just desperate for things to mean something.
It already has so much meaning. I was actually wondering what the point was of the colored discs.
Nobody knows.
I think you have a really good reason. You don't like it?
I don't know. I like the material. I like the way that it catches light and glows and feels like something like where it looks irradiated.
Like that, especially that light green color.
Right? And in the right lighting, more of them do that.
I mean, here's a crazy idea. Okay, this whole work is about, like, this whole show is about duality, right? Critiquing dualistic thinking.
That's one way to see it, sure.
And I mean, from a cosmic perspective, the end of the world is not a bad thing. It's all one thing. There's no good, there's no bad. It's not like, that's bad. Blowing up the world's bad. That's dualistic thinking.
It's pretty bad, though.
I mean, yes, on one level it is.
Girlfriend.
On another level,
No.
I'm just speaking for the cosmic. That God works in mysterious ways.
Oh.
We don't know where all this is going.
I mean,
I'm not saying I believe that, but I'm saying that that is a non-dualistic perspective on everything, that you don't know if it is good or it's not good or bad. It just is.
I think that there is such a thing as good and bad. I'll have to go back to saying that there are evils, and I think this is one of them.
I agree.
Plastic might
I
also
agree
be
in
one
the
of
human
them.
realm, but that is true.
Well, who's to say that the human realm is not also the cosmic realm?
I don't know. But that's non-duality. It's where it no longer makes sense in these terms. It's like, well, I believe in non-duality, except when it comes to this, then that's really as bad.
Is that non-duality, or is that just amoral stance?
Non-duality is amoral.
Is it?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I think diversity is
I think-
a moral good. And I don't think that the antithesis to diversity is an amoral, everything's
I don't
okay.
know. I think that we decide what is good. I think that's where what makes a human being possibly divine or magical, or powerful or whatever, or hearted. We decide. I don't think it is intrinsic. I think the universe is neutral. It just is. And I think that as human beings, maybe we decide, but it might be good to check in with the non-dual realm every once in a while to make sure we're not deluding ourselves about what God says is good.
Okay, that's fair.
That's what I get from this.
I don't get that or intend that from this, but that I can't really.
I mean, what I get is that you've made mushroom clouds beautiful.
No, this is an illustration of a quote, and the quote is from Bill Mollison. The quote is, "We can lose all of our universities and libraries and survive, but if we lose our forests, we lose our instructors." So, what good is all this wisdom if we lose, like, these trees were cut down to print these books? So now what? What's more valuable? What do we hold dear? This is in a lot of ways a critique of human supremacist thinking, that we have the solutions and that we have the control and that we know better, that there are, technological solutions to all the ways that we've undid the jet streams and the way that the climate of the Holocene worked. But we can just spray some sulfur in the air and it'll all be good, and we can just keep making money and books. And
So, who's the guy with the axe?
well, that is my version, my bastardized version of Donatello's Kinky Boots David. And instead of a slingshot, he has an axe. And instead of a giant, he's got his foot on Mother Nature.
Oh, that's Mother Nature.
It could be. It's pretty like on the nose, the whole thing. It's this is where I say, like, this work is embarrassing. Because it's like, oh God. It's pretty ham-fisted, like the whole thing.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I have a pretty obvious messages that inspire my work, but once it becomes the work, if you don't say what you're thinking, it can be about a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know?
The boots would have been a nice touch.
You know, if I had it to do over, I would spend time. It was hard. I'm not super proud of this sculpture. It's not. I feel like it was
But
beyond
it's
my
so-
skill level. All of these things I will say at the time were beyond my skill level. I was pushing.
But that's good. And I mean, I feel like that sort of, you described it as kind of like that ham-fisted quality, and how it's all parts of this. It's very consistent. It's like this screaming cry for attention and help for,
Yeah.
you know, the trees.
Well, all the life.
Like, yes. You said ham-fisted.
It is hand-fisted. I know that.
But I mean, I don't think in a bad way.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I don't know, I feel like there might be this kind of, like you were saying, like, you have to obscure things to make them serious. And it's like the innocence of it, like the wisdom of a child. Like, the emperor has no clothes, you know? Like, maybe we're, you know, conditioned to only take things seriously that are obscured so that only a few people can make out what they mean. Like,
Maybe.
I think sometimes obvious is direct, and
I think maybe you should have fucked up the books more,
Really? The hollowed knowledge that our civilization holds? How
how
dare
would you
I?
fuck them up? Like burn them a little?
But I'm gonna point something out. Nobody reads actual volumes of the encyclopedia anymore. It's like phone books.
No,
Who has a phone book?
We have this. This
Yeah,
has
exactly.
more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's
this
almost,
kind of
like,
brings
it's
us-
almost like if you had all of this instead of encyclopedias,
Google.
like 50 old cell phones or something.
But something about that, like we were just talking about that last night, about how our family, we all have the encyclopedia set in our house. Like, so it kind of dates it to our generation's early life, where we believed in knowledge. Every family believed in the truth in the set of encyclopedias. So,
But I know, but we still need people like that. So I like the idea of having geniuses.
Yeah.
well, I think that those people like that, or like this, or that, or this, like we all have the potential to be connected in that way. And the question is, okay, if without our forests, we have no teachers, guides, instructors. So, but even with the forest, how do you receive this instruction? Like, how do you embody it? How
Go
do
be
you,
in the forest and pay attention.
right? So
You have to be observant. And here's the thing, is that Encyclopedia Britannica is a specific way of seeing. It's a way to be observant. It's a frame and a context of observation.
Oh,
That leaves out a lot, you know?
right.
It leaves out this thing that you're describing, and this
Right.
materiality. But you can read it and assume you know everything about everything. I learned a lot from books. I learned how to do permaculture online. I don't know how to garden. Like, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. Exactly.
But even our definition of what is knowledge, competency, ability to master the material world, like there's other forms of knowledge that are not that are heart knowledge. Is this even worth doing? I mean, learning how to build another thing, is that, I mean, with heart knowledge, that might be useless information.
Yeah.
Do we need to build another thing?
I don't know, I keep doing it. No.
I don't even mean art, I mean like, you know, robot or something.
How's your back doing?
I'm dealing with it right now.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that piece?
Well, I feel like we've hit them all now, maybe we should just complete the tour.
Okay, this piece is titled "A Holocene is Over," which is a quote from a friend who mentored Joe Brewer, who started an Earth Regenerators online group community. I made this in 2021. It was my way of trying to grapple with authoritarian empire and how that happens. How does rapid ecocide happen? And there was an ecofeminist critique that in order to treat the planet the way that we're treating it, you have to first disassociate yourself from being part of it. And that is also, when we made men toxic masculinity or men greater than women, we also separated ourselves from Earth. And so when men could own and put themselves over women, they also could own and put themselves over land. And so I thought that she, with her, these breasts are like a cluster of grapes. They're obviously about abundance and feeding. And it occurred to me that a lot of the fertility goddesses that exist in ancient times were discovered by archaeologists who, when they came across the female form, said, this is a fertility goddess. And if they came across a masculine form, it would be a king or a person who had some historic relevance. So I wanted to look into this fertility goddess and who she is and what it meant. But I also felt like this particular fertility goddess was very phallic. So this is a Diana of Ephesus, which is, there are many iterations of this sculpture. And I thought this was this point where the masculine tried to dominate or claim also fecundity and birth and life-giving powers. So here's this fecundity that's in this phallic shape. There's an art historian, Gerald Sterlin, who said, yeah, well, if you look at these, sometimes her breasts have nipples, as she does at the fountain of Ephesus, where the water's running over. It looks like milk is pouring forth from her. But there are other times where there are no nipples. And so what is always consistent is that she has, in her skirts, penned bulls seated, and usually on her shoulders, more bulls and horses. And her crown is always like a tower, like a grain silo with crenulations. So he was suggesting that the nippleless torso were the castrated testicles of all these bulls, which is interesting, because what does that say about fertility and fecundity in this abundance, right? These are all, to me then, looking closer, I recognize these as the symbols of state. State amasses wealth, state as in civilization amasses wealth and puts it in grain silos and hoards it and needs it to feed armies. So it made me rethink the piece about maybe this abundance, this grape-like cluster of breasts is about, and this femininity that holds it is more about a wild, fecund, abundant state of nature, and the state is about castration, domestication, amassing of wealth, hoarding it in a place, and civilization, which calling it civilization. And most civilizations, historically, Rome like them, crumble and desertify an abundant area around them. So, like Mesopotamia, the breadbasket is now a desert because there were great civilizations there that did not tend that land well. So the human civilizing influence on the landscape that sustained it was to eradicate it and destroy it. And then so I naturally wanted, sticking with the breasts and the nurturing state of nature, which is obvious, I thought then of this capital scene wolf and her many breasts and the way that she was treated, and I wanted to center her as the wild, fecund, nurturing, life-giving source. And then these two bastards down here are the twins that suckled on her and then grew up to, one murdered the other and founded Rome. So that's this piece. And I added to my Diana epithets a little bit of version de Guadalupe and some Kuan Yin, and Kuan Yin's many hands, and she's just exhausted.
Haven't you ever asked yourself why there are so many myths of one brother murdering the other one?
It's black and white. It's the duality.
It's internal conflict.
Hmm.
It's the two sides of ourselves, power and love, always in battle with each other.
King and evil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good and bad, you know?
Well, if it hadn't, if Remus had killed Romulus, would we have had Reem instead of Rome?
Yeah. We have reams of things.
How long have you been waiting to use that one?
I just thought of it.
You did? I'm impressed.
Honestly.
You know, as I'm looking at this, Tara, like, this one is more recent. Is this the most recent?
No, that's
Okay.
That's that and the bombs. So the bombs started in 2017 and continued till last year, and will continue into the future to kind of get to that 200 or 400 of the domestic detonations that the U.S. did.
I feel like you're working with these, like, grand patterns of how that, you know, in the progress of Western civilization, the taming of the feminine, the, you know, dissociation, the split from the land, the mind, body, and all of that. Like, and what your last sentence when you were just describing this was, and she's exhausted and depleted. Was that it? I think.
Maybe, yeah.
And just knowing you and your work, you've been like heavily engaged in this narrative and this diagnosis of where we're at for a long time, and I know that you've felt the weight of it to like respond in some meaningful way. And I feel like just seeing where you've come through this, using your body, your senses to create these works that are many in the language of control from the mind, ideas, you know, opposing ideas on these forms. And where you're at now with your work is kind of the embodiment of what you're talking about here, which is the feminine, say, the senses, the, you know, bottom up, fecundity. I mean, the work that you're doing now, there's hints of it in all of this, in the surfaces, you know, in the kind of organic forms that are, that this very structured sculpture is melting into. And so, I don't know, like I'm seeing you as just like your artist self as kind of paralleling what's been going on, and you're a leading edge as you move into a more embodied way of creating. That's,
Yeah, I want to bring these thoughts with me forward, but I also want to make, like, I'm more interested in color and just materiality and just playing with materials, which I was doing that while making this work too,
Yeah.
but I never took that, like, this is the serious work.
yeah.
This is my ego, right? This is me thinking I know what the hell I'm talking about.
And also placing yourself within a bigger artistic concept in a really specific way. But your direction for the future?
Colorful,
More
weaving
like that.
tapestries, but also the sculptures that I'm making now are trying to be more colorful and more free, like not trying to necessarily be naturalistic or realistic or trying to emulate the classics, because I feel like that's a losing battle. And I came to a place last year, Kate and I were talking about the struggle of making work and how hard it is, you know, when you have this idea of how good things need to be and feeling like it's a failure, like the struggle of the making. And I came to a place where I thought, I just want to make things with joy. I don't care if they look good. I don't care, you know, I just want to see what happens if I'm loose.
When you get
And
to my age, you'll be there. You'll have that feeling that it just doesn't matter.
Well, we were recognizing it as the introject of this like dominant paradigm. Like that's where we've internalized it. It's not even our values.
No,
But
it's
still-
imposed on you from the
Yeah.
outside. And when you get to the point of saying, fuck it.
I think it got to that place, and the work is more interesting to me when I don't know what it's about.
Absolutely.
You know, it's more. There's more vitality to it. There's more. I can't tell you why I make it or what it's for. I'm not on a soapbox, but
But all of that will make itself clear in time.
it's time. Yeah.
And that's the bottom up. That's trusting that there is some source of knowledge, visual knowledge, sensual knowledge,
some interaction.
that's receiving instruction from the forest.
or the spirit of the forest.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Forest that was once here. Well,
I just have arms.
I can understand the turn in your work from that perspective. And I think about how hard it is just to live this reality and to take away the one place that's a sense of refuge for an artist, which is within the work, and make it a place where you're focused on everything that's bad about human civilization. It's very hard to keep that up for more than a certain number of years, and that making work that it's beautiful and colorful isn't just a service to your own mental health, it's a service to the world.
Maybe.
I agree. I think
That's Kate's spiel, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
How it helps.
I think assertions of vitality and health and freedom are just as revolutionary, maybe more so, as more critique of what's going on.
Because everybody knows.
Yes, everyone knows, and we have to figure out a way to turn the Titanic around before it goes down.